Hello and welcome. My name's Karina Stocker and I am the UC for Supporting Diversity and Equity, and I'm also an ELA. This is our first recording and it's for Assessment 1, the case study report. We would love you to view this and write down any questions you have before we run our live Collaborate in week 3. The dates and time for the live Collaborate session should be on your discussion boards, or you might need to ask your ELA. You can attend another Collaborate session if that time doesn't suit you. We are running 3 for this assessment. Okay, let's get started. Excuse me. So, some basics first. The assessment is worth 30% of your final mark, so it's a significant amount, and a good submission here will take pressure off you in the coming assessments and provide the opportunity to reach an excellent overall result. The word count is 1,500 words, plus or minus 10%. So your assignment should be between 1,350 and 1,650, somewhere within that boundary. It is a report style presentation. If you've not completed a report before, it's essential that you pay close attention to the information provided in this session, as well as any supporting documents posted in your discussion board or in the assessment details. Reports are nothing to be afraid of, and they're actually a skill you will be thankful for when you enter the workplace. It does, however, take a little effort to understand how to present them. This assessment is really designed to develop your ability to defend and support children's rights with regards to their mental health and development, and it's really there to help you in your future role. It's going to develop your ability to examine, analyse and act. The due date is the 5th of December. This assessment task requires you to respond to a fictional case, James, to enable you to examine and defend children's rights towards their health and development within a human rights and equity framework. It relates to learning outcome number 2, examine and defend children's rights and teacher advocacy. There's 2 things there, children's rights and teacher advocacy. So the assessment criteria. There are 4 assessment criteria that you will be marked on. So make sure that you're looking at all 4 of these statements. They're quite loaded. There's lots of things in each of them, so highlight the keywords and really read this assessment criteria. Number 1, discussion of the topic with definitions around the issues and a background rationale as to why advocacy for both children and teachers is important. So advocacy for children and advocacy for children. 2, discussion of the case study with relevance to research into policies and supporting issues in mental health and well-being and other similar examples as relevant. So we're looking at policies, research into policies. So there could be state or federal policies around the issue, and that needs to be included. 3, your conclusion noting the issues raised and some select recommendations for either teachers, institutes or policymakers. Note that it's recommendations. 4, the structure and organisation of ideas. So it needs to be a report structure. The written expression, including spelling, punctuation and grammar, are accurate, and also that you're referencing according to APA conventions, all normal things. Okay, let's move on. Let's have a look at the structure. Now there is a template that is provided in your assessment details PDF. I want you to download it. I want you to use it because I really think that when you begin this assessment, your first step should be researching what a report structure is, so that you can structure it effectively and make it work for you. So the structure needs to have a title page, it needs to have an abstract or an executive summary, it needs to have a contents page, an introduction, discussion, conclusion, and recommendations. Notice it isn't a recommendation, it is recommendations, and we'll have a little look at this later. You need to then have your references and appendices, if any. You might have one, you might not, that doesn't matter. It's important to note that the executive summary is different to the introduction, and that's why I want you to do a little bit of research around what a report style structure is. So you can look at the student toolbox, you can do some research in other university websites or reputable websites to find out what you need to include. Another thing you can do is to read journal articles, because they will provide you with examples on executive summaries. This information here I've taken from Griffith University. It's writing a case study. So you might go and have a look at their case study report for your initial research around report writing. Case studies are about real life situations. They involve an in-depth observation of a case, such as an event, process, or person, James. Additionally, case study assignments usually ask you to go further, to analyse a set of circumstances in relation to theory on the topic and possibly make some suggestions to solve a problem. So we'll be looking at James, we'll be looking at policies and theory that relates to James's case, we'll be discussing this, and then the suggestions are your recommendations. Or they might be your discussion on the different strategies. Case studies require you to demonstrate the skills of observation, analysis, problem solving, together with an understanding of ethics and professionalism. We're going to look at that in a little moment. They should be written in a formal, professional language. Some great tips there. Okay, I'll just move on. So the task. This assessment requires you to discuss strategies that could be used to better support James's mental health and well-being, but not to provide clear strategies. We don't want a list of things that you're planning to do. We want you to discuss the options. You were to highlight complexities for teachers. This is an easy task for teachers, mental health and well-being of students. So what are the complexities? You discuss this as part of your report. Your discussion should look at advocacy for both children and teachers. Don't forget to consider legal and ethical responsibilities of teachers. Remember to discuss both the topic and the case provided. Don't forget to provide recommendations as part of your conclusion. This can be recommendations for teachers, institutions, or policy makers. And make sure they are recommendations and not one single recommendation. Okay, so other than researching a report style structure, how are you going to go about doing your research? I've got some tips here. First, I'd like you to consider the weeks 1 to 5 learning materials, especially week 3. These are some of the questions posed in week 3. How might teachers support students who are struggling with a mental health problem? What support would staff need? So advocacy for staff to effectively manage their class and individual students. So these questions relate directly to this assessment. So the information and learning materials in week 3 would be a great start for your research. Okay, once you've done that, you'll then move on and you might consider professional code of conduct. You might look at your state Department of Education for your legal responsibilities and duty of care. I've just found a couple of examples for you, which we'll go over and have a look at. So an example of somewhere to go research for this professional and ethical and legal requirements might be the Victorian Teaching Professional Code of Conduct, so the VIT, or your state equivalent. And it just goes through, it's a great document. Hopefully you've already read it. If not, have a look. And it just goes through ethical and legal and professional standards that teachers are required to adhere to. So that might be one of your places that you might start your research. Another example I've got here is the Victorian State Government Department of Education website, where there's lots of policies and information for schools. This one that I've come into is support for disengaged and at-risk students, which is James. And it goes through information about identifying the students at risk, school-based strategies, re-engagement programs. It also looks at legal and ethical requirements. So that's another place you might look at. And the last one I wanted to show you was this one's from the New South Wales Department of Education, and it's just an article on professional responsibilities. So those were just some examples that I found. You'll probably come up with all different ones that relate to your state better, or you might find relate to the case better, but you need to be considering these professional codes of conduct and the legal responsibilities and duty of care of teachers. You might consider curriculum documentation, consider department policies and documentation. You might consider textbooks, journal articles, and learning theories might even pop up in your report. I really want to see reference to journal and peer-reviewed articles, as this is a big part of academic writing, so don't forget that. You might consider reputable websites regarding mental health. These ones that I've got listed here are from the week 3 learning materials. Can you think of any other places to conduct your research? Maybe you'll talk to a current teacher who might be in a similar situation. Okay, moving on. Academic writing. You guys should have had lots of experience with this. You've probably done close to 15 assessments, even more. So theory, what is it? Theory is course notes or anything academic that you're reading in relation to the topic. It might be textbooks, readings, journal articles. It might even be learning theories. So theory doesn't just mean learning theories. Theory means anything that you're reading, academic reading, that you're doing regarding the issues. Have you linked to practice? How does the research that you've conducted, so the theory that you've read, link to practice? How does it relate, or how can it be applied practically? We like to see that link between theory and practice. Have you referenced correctly? Is your work in third person? Have you ensured correct punctuation, grammar, and sentence structure, ensuring a professional polish? So have a look at these things and make sure that you're covering this in your report. So word count. So this is just a bit of a little guide for you. The title page is not included in your word count. The executive summary is not included in your word count. Look at examples in journals you're reading. Contents page is not included in your word count. What is included is the introduction, and we suggest about 1,500 words. The discussion, we suggest about 1,000 words. The conclusion, we would suggest 1,500 words, and then your recommendations, we would consider 1,500 words. You can combine the conclusion and recommendations to about 300 words, but make sure that you do allow that 300 words, because the recommendations are a huge part of this assessment. References are not included. Now, I have said recommended 10 to 12. I really don't like giving you a number, but I just wanted to give you a bit of a guide. But be careful, quality references beat quantity, and so too does good integration. I would rather 8 really quality references from journal articles and policies and really good stuff than 10 to 12 random Google searches. So just be careful, make sure it's quality, and that you have good integration of your source material. It's not just tacked on in places. And your appendixes are not included in the word count. Now, you'll be marked using a holistic rubric. This simply means that you need to demonstrate each descriptor before you can be considered for a higher grade. Let's take a quick look before we run out of time. Okay, so this is the holistic rubric for this assessment, and this is the pass grade. I just want to remind you that to be able to pass this assessment, you need to have completed every single one of these dot points. So if your assessment doesn't have an executive summary, then you can't pass this assessment, even if you've done everything else. Okay, so make sure you're reading these and you are ticking them off as you do them, because you cannot pass this assessment, as I said, without meeting these 5 points and fully meeting them. Once you do and you meet all 5, then you can be considered for the next grade. So for credit, if you meet all 4 and you've met all the pass grades, we can consider you for a distinction, and so on. So make sure you're using this holistic rubric and you're ticking it off as you go, because this is what we use to mark your assessment. So it's very, very important that you make sure, even if you're aiming for a high distinction, that you look at this pass grade, because if you haven't met these, even though your essay is brilliantly written and you've met everything else, you can't pass the assessment. Okay, great. So we will be submitting via Turnitin, and it's due Monday the 5th of December. Assistance. So the best sources for assistance: the discussion board to chat as a whole group about any issues, angles concerning the assessment, posing questions. We get to learn from your answers. Your fellow students in ELA are there to help. Attend the live Collaborate session in week 3, and you can also use the support in Blackboard, your tutor, Smart Thinking, and all of those other resources that are available to you. Ensure that you research widely, respond to the criteria, and submit by the due date, and you'll be fine. So best of luck. Hope you've got all those questions written down, and we will see you at the live Collaborate session. Okay, bye.